The hall was alive with soft chatter and the gentle clinking of glasses. Soft lights hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the polished floor. It was the kind of evening where everyone wore their best clothes, their best smiles, and tried to leave behind the weight of everyday life. He had arrived in a sharp suit, looking every bit the part of someone important in the room. His eyes scanned the crowd with a quiet confidence, assessing, judging. It's the way people often did without thinking. Among the crowd, he noticed her immediately, though not for reasons one might expect. She stood quietly near the edge of the hall, her posture straight but unassuming. She wore a simple dress, modest and without embellishment. There was nothing striking about her appearance in his eyes. Her hair was neatly tied back, and her face, partially hidden by the soft fold of her veil, showed little more than polite calm. To him, she seemed plain. Someone who might fade into the background in any busy room. He let his gaze linger, not out of admiration, but out of curiosity. Why was she standing alone? Why did she seem content not to join the crowd? There was a calmness about her that puzzled him. Most people here were engaged in loud conversations or showing off their outfits. But she simply existed in the space around her, quietly observing. That in itself was unusual, but he dismissed it. Perhaps she was shy, or perhaps she did not belong in such a lively gathering. As the night went on, he found himself repeatedly noticing her, always from a distance. She moved slowly through the room, polite nods and gentle smiles offered to those she passed. She helped an elderly woman adjust her shawl and offered her seat to someone who looked uncomfortable. Small gestures unnoticed by most that went completely unremarkable to him at first. He did not yet understand the depth behind these actions. Seeing them simply as polite manners, the music shifted, a soft melody that made people sway and smile. He watched as couples began to dance, and the atmosphere became lighter, more carefree. Yet she remained near the edge, her eyes quietly scanning the crowd. There was a kind of patience about her, a calm that seemed almost deliberate. It annoyed him slightly at first. This idea that she could be so serene when others were laughing loudly, celebrating living fully. He wondered why someone like her would choose to stay in the shadows. Curiosity pulled him closer, and he found himself approaching her. He offered a polite nod, expecting the usual return smile, the brief greeting, the casual conversation that often followed such meetings. "Good evening," he said. His voice carried the confidence of someone used to being noticed. She looked up, her eyes meeting his, with a soft steadiness. "Good evening," she replied, her voice calm and pleasant. Without any attempt to impress or charm, he took a small step closer, feeling slightly unsettled by the normalcy of her tone. Most people, when meeting someone like him, tried to display a certain energy, a sparkle that drew attention. She offered none of that. She offered simply herself. It was strange, disorienting even. But he brushed it off, convincing himself it was unimportant, enjoying the evening. He asked, keeping his words casual, attempting small talk as was expected. She nodded gently. "Yes, it is a lovely gathering. Thank you for asking." Her smile was small but sincere. There was something in her eyes, a quiet intelligence, a calm observation, that made him pause for a moment. He realized she was noticing more than most people around her. She was aware of the little things. The nervous laughter of the young woman near the food table. The tired smile of the older man adjusting his tie. The subtle exchange of whispered conversation between friends. He did not quite know why, but he felt a strange pull, a curiosity he could not easily name. He wanted to speak more, to ask more, but the words felt clumsy, forced. He was unused to interacting with someone who did not immediately impress him with glamour or charm. She did not make grand gestures. She did not draw attention with flashy accessories or loud conversation. Yet, in her calmness, it was a strange sort of presence that he could not ignore. For the rest of the evening, their paths crossed several times. Each encounter was brief, a shared glance while moving past each other, a polite nod from across the room, a moment of silent recognition in the midst of the bustling crowd. Every time he felt a small flicker of curiosity, a question forming in his mind. There was something different about her, something he could not quite define. He found himself paying attention despite his initial judgment. Meanwhile, she continued with her quiet observance. She noticed the small things, like the way the candles flickered unevenly, casting shadows on the walls, or how the music changed tempo slightly, unnoticed by most. She noticed his glances, subtle yet unmistakable, and she did not seem offended or flustered. Instead, she remained poised, moving gracefully and calmly through the evening, fully present but not seeking acknowledgement. At one point, a child ran past, bumping into a guest who almost lost balance. She was there in an instant, steadying both the child and the adult, offering a gentle word and a reassuring smile. Everyone thanked her quickly and then moved on. He watched quietly, a small part of him feeling that there was more to this person than he had first thought. Yet his pride held him back from admitting it, even to himself. He spent a few moments reflecting on his own thoughts. Why did he feel drawn to someone so plain in appearance? Someone who did not actively seek attention. He tried to shake off the feeling, blaming it on boredom or curiosity. But deep down, he could not ignore the quiet impact she had made simply by existing in the room with a sense of calm and kindness that was unusual. The evening continued, filled with laughter, conversations, and moments that would later be remembered as ordinary. Yet for him, the night had started to take on a different tone. There was an awareness forming, a subtle shift in perception. He had met many people, seen countless faces, and judged based on the surface. But she was slowly challenging that pattern, showing him that quiet presence could speak louder than words, and that simplicity could hold a depth he had not yet understood by the time the event began to wind down. He found himself glancing toward her one last time. She stood near the exit, politely helping a guest gather their coat and belongings. Her movements were gentle, considered, and completely natural. It struck him that everything she did, every small action, carried a thoughtfulness and grace he had not initially noticed. As she turned to leave, she offered a polite nod in his direction. He returned it, feeling an unexpected mixture of admiration and regret. He realized he had judged her too quickly, too easily. In her simplicity, there was something that mattered, something beyond appearances, something he had missed entirely at first glance. He watched as she walked away, blending once again into the crowd, leaving him with a growing curiosity that he could not ignore. He knew, somewhere deep inside, that this evening would not be forgotten. Not because of the lights, the music, or the celebrations, but because of the quiet presence of someone he had once thought plain. It was the beginning of a story, though he did not yet know where it would lead, or how much it would change the way he saw the world around him. Days passed after that evening, but he could not stop thinking about her. The way she had quietly existed in the bustling room, unnoticed by most, left an impression he did not fully understand. Her calmness, her small gestures of kindness, and her gentle presence lingered in his mind. He found himself replaying the evening in fragments, wondering about her thoughts, her life, and the reasons she had seemed so different from everyone else there. He had never been one to dwell on someone's appearance alone, but she had challenged his assumptions. There was a quiet confidence about her that made him question his own quick judgments. He realized he had only seen her from the surface, noticing the modest dress, the simple demeanor, and thinking it meant ordinary. Now he wondered if he had missed something far more significant. In the following days, he heard about the events she had participated in, small acts of kindness that others mentioned casually. She had helped organize a charity drive, tended to someone who had fallen sick, spent hours volunteering at a local community center. Everyone who knew her spoke of her with warmth and admiration, highlighting qualities he had barely noticed at the gathering. Each story painted a picture he had not expected, showing that her presence was meaningful, not just in subtle gestures, but in actions that affected many. Curiosity became a subtle pull in his daily life. He began paying attention when he was in places she might be, hoping to catch a glimpse or witness a small moment that could explain the quiet intrigue he felt. At first, he tried to convince himself it was mere fascination, a fleeting thought that would pass. But as days went by, it became clearer that his interest was rooted in something deeper. He wanted to understand her, to see beyond the first impression he had allowed to shape his judgment. One afternoon, their paths crossed unexpectedly at a local market. He had gone to pick up a few things for himself, wandering through aisles filled with fruits, vegetables, and the scent of fresh bread. She was there, choosing items carefully, her movements deliberate but unhurried. She smiled briefly at an elderly vendor who greeted her warmly, and her eyes caught his from across the room. She offered a small nod, the same calm acknowledgement he had noticed before. He approached cautiously, unsure how to start a conversation without seeming intrusive. "Hello," he said softly, careful not to startle her. She looked up, her expression serene. "Hello," she replied, her voice carrying the same quiet warmth as before. They began to walk through the aisles together, exchanging small talk at first. She asked about ordinary things, the weather, the market, the freshness of produce, but there was an ease in her conversation that made him relax without realizing it. Unlike many people he had met, she did not try to impress him or boast about her knowledge. She simply shared her observations and listened attentively when he spoke as they moved. He noticed little things that drew him in, the way she paused to offer help to a young mother struggling with her child, or how she smiled at a shy shop assistant as if her presence alone could make them feel seen. Each action, small and simple, began to build a new image in his mind. He realized that her beauty was not just in her appearance, but in her actions, her consideration for others, and the warmth she radiated naturally. They stopped near a stall with handmade crafts, and he watched as she examined each item with genuine interest. She asked questions about the artisans, showing care for the work behind the pieces rather than simply the final product. He found himself explaining things to her, and she listened, nodding and asking thoughtful questions. For the first time, he noticed that he enjoyed his own words more when speaking to her. There was no judgment, no competition, just a shared moment of curiosity and understanding. As the afternoon wore on, their conversation deepened. She shared stories of her life, her family, and her dreams in a manner that felt effortless and honest. She spoke about helping neighbors, organizing small community events, and the joy she found in simple, meaningful work. He was surprised by how her experiences contrasted with the assumptions he had made about her based on appearance alone. She was not plain. She was full of depth, kindness, and a quiet strength that he had failed to see initially. He realized he was learning to see people differently. With her, there was no need for pretense or impression. She did not conform to the loudness of the world or the superficial judgments that often guided his own thoughts. Instead, she lived in a way that was quietly intentional, thoughtful, and deeply human. He found himself thinking about how many times he had missed such qualities in others, simply because he had looked too quickly, judged too early, and overlooked the richness of subtlety. Their time together ended with a simple goodbye, a promise to see each other again, though neither spoke it directly. As he walked away, he felt a shift in his perspective. The plainness he had perceived before had begun to fade, replaced by a sense of curiosity and respect. He realized that first impressions could be misleading, and that true understanding came from observation, patience, and attention to the small things in the days that followed. He reflected on the encounters at the market and the earlier gathering. He noticed himself being more attentive, more aware of people around him, and more thoughtful in his judgments. He found joy in discovering small acts of kindness, in noticing the quiet confidence in those who did not seek attention, and in valuing substance over appearance. He also thought about her frequently. There was something magnetic, not in a superficial way, but in the sense that she inspired him to see differently, to question assumptions, and to appreciate the subtleties of character. He realized he wanted to know more, not for conquest or admiration, but for understanding, for the simple joy of learning about someone who was, in every way that mattered, remarkable with each day. The pull toward her grew stronger. He began seeking more moments where he might encounter her, more opportunities to observe her in her natural environment, and more chances to engage in conversation. Each small interaction revealed another layer of depth, kindness, and intelligence, making it clear that the plainness he had assumed was nothing more than the result of his own quick judgment. By the end of the week, he understood something important. She was not just another face in the crowd. She was a presence that left an imprint, subtle but undeniable. She challenged him to think differently, to slow down, and to truly see people beyond what first met the eye. And though he did not yet know the full extent of their connection, he felt certain that she would play a role in changing not only how he viewed others, but also how he viewed himself in her quiet way. She had become a mirror, reflecting the limitations of his perceptions and inspiring a curiosity he had never felt before. It was the beginning of a journey, one that promised to be unexpected, insightful, and deeply human. And he knew, without fully understanding why, that he wanted to follow where it might lead, eager to uncover the layers of a person he had once thought plain, but who was now proving to be anything but ordinary. Weeks went by, and life moved in its usual rhythm, but he could not forget her. Every time he passed by a park, a market, or a street he knew she frequented, he found himself scanning for her calm presence. There was a quiet longing in the search, not for romance at first, but for understanding. He wanted to know more about the person he had misjudged so quickly, to learn about the qualities that made her quietly remarkable. One afternoon, news spread of a small community event, a gathering aimed at helping children in need. It was the kind of event she would naturally attend, and he felt a pull to be there as well, curious to see her in action. He arrived early, watching as volunteers set up tables, hung decorations, and organized small games. The hall buzzed with a nervous energy, some volunteers unsure of their roles, while others moved confidently, managing tasks effortlessly. She arrived shortly after him, her presence calm and steady. She moved among the volunteers, helping wherever she was needed without seeking attention. He noticed the way she spoke to people, her tone always kind, her words encouraging. A young girl dropped her papers, looking embarrassed. She was there in an instant, smiling warmly and helping the girl gather everything. There was no rush, no sense of superiority, just a quiet patience that seemed effortless. He felt a twinge of admiration, followed by a subtle guilt for his initial judgment. Here was someone whose plain appearance had hidden an inner strength and compassion he had overlooked. And yet he also felt something unfamiliar, a sense of intrigue that went beyond admiration. He wanted to be near her, to witness her actions, to understand her world in a way he had never understood before. The event began. Children running around, parents chatting, and volunteers guiding activities. She took charge of a small corner, organizing a reading station for children who preferred quiet activities. She explained stories in a way that made each child feel seen, using gestures, tones, and expressions that captivated them. He watched quietly, amazed at her ability to engage with patience and genuine care. Later, a mishap occurred. One of the small tables collapsed under the weight of books and crafts. Panic and frustration rippled through the volunteers, but she remained composed. She quickly assessed the situation, calmly rearranging the books and asking others for assistance. Her composure and leadership were natural, unassuming, and effective. He realized that she commanded attention not through loudness or grandeur, but through the steadiness of her character and the respect she inspired in others. He found himself helping her. Though he was careful not to appear eager or intrusive, she spoke to him casually, as if he were simply another volunteer, not someone she needed to impress. Together they arranged the books, set up new activities, and ensured that the children were engaged and happy. He noticed small details about her, how her eyes lit up when a child smiled, the subtle ways she encouraged teamwork among the volunteers, the calm efficiency in her movements. Between tasks, they had a moment to talk. He found himself asking questions, genuinely curious about her experiences. "How did you get involved with this work?" he asked. She smiled softly. "I enjoy helping people, especially children. It makes me happy to see them feel seen and supported. Everyone has the ability to make a small difference, and I try to do that wherever I can." Her words were simple, but they carried a depth that struck him. He realized that her actions were guided by genuine care, not the need for recognition. That realization deepened his respect for her, and he felt an unfamiliar sense of humility. For the first time, he was considering someone's character without filtering it through the lens of superficial impressions. Throughout the afternoon, Small moments continued to unfold. A boy tripped near the snack table, and she immediately helped him up, checking if he was hurt. Speaking to him with a soft reassurance, a volunteer seemed unsure about where to direct children, and she gently guided him, offering advice without judgment. Every small act was an extension of her presence, calm, considerate, and full of empathy. He was observing more than participating at this point, silently amazed at the impact she had on the people around her. What struck him most was that she never sought praise or recognition. Her motivation was not to be admired, but to make the environment better for those around her. He realized how much he had missed before, how many times he had been distracted by appearances and overlooked true substance. As the event drew to a close, she gathered the volunteers for a brief discussion. She thanked each person sincerely, highlighting their efforts and the impact they had made. Her words were heartfelt, and there was a quiet authority in her tone that demanded respect without needing to assert it. He felt drawn to her in a way that was different from anything he had experienced before. It was not just attraction, it was admiration, curiosity, and a growing recognition of the value of seeing people for who they truly were. The children waved goodbye, many calling out thanks to her specifically. She smiled at them, waving back with a gentle grace. He realized that the plainness he had perceived initially had been a misjudgment. Her veil, her modest clothing, her calm demeanor, all had hidden a vibrant, capable, and deeply kind person. He felt a mix of awe and regret, wishing he had seen beyond the surface sooner. Later, as they walked out of the hall together, he felt a sense of ease around her that he had never experienced before. There was no need for posturing or impressing. Her presence alone made him reflect on his own actions, his own assumptions, and the way he interacted with the world. He realized that being around her was not just enjoyable, but enlightening. She had a way of teaching without words, guiding by example, and showing the importance of small, meaningful acts. On the way home, he could not stop thinking about the afternoon. Each memory of her helping a child, calming a nervous volunteer, organizing quietly but effectively played repeatedly in his mind. He felt a mixture of inspiration and self-reflection. He wanted to learn from her, to understand the world through her eyes, and to see beyond superficial judgments in all aspects of life. That evening, he reflected deeply on his own perspective. He realized that he had allowed assumptions to guide his first impression, missing the essence of a person who was quietly remarkable. He understood now that true beauty and influence often came in subtle forms, in kindness, patience, and unwavering composure. He began to see the value of looking deeper, of observing without judgment, and appreciating the quiet impact one person could have. The experience left a lasting impression on him, marking the beginning of a shift in how he approached relationships and human interactions. He felt a growing desire to know her better, not just as someone intriguing, but as someone who could change the way he saw the world. There was a lesson in her presence that he had yet to fully understand, and he sensed that the moments to come would reveal more about her, and, in turn, about himself. He also noticed a subtle excitement, a quiet anticipation for the next encounter. It was not about romance yet, not in a conventional sense, but about the curiosity and admiration that comes from witnessing someone live authentically and with purpose. She had shown him a new lens through which to see the world, one that valued depth over surface and substance over appearance. And as he walked away that day, he felt a quiet certainty that the story was far from over, that there were more moments to experience, more lessons to learn, and more of her to discover in ways that would surprise and move him. Weeks had passed since the community event, yet he found himself replaying every small detail, every subtle gesture she had made. Her calm presence, her kindness, and her unassuming nature had left a deep impression. He noticed a change in himself. He was no longer quick to judge appearances, more attentive to people, and more aware of the little things that defined character. But even with all this reflection, he had not yet seen her fully. There was one moment still to come that would leave an unforgettable mark. It was another evening, and a close friend invited him to a cultural celebration at a grand hall. He had arrived early, scanning the room, not for recognition, but hoping, quietly, to catch a glimpse of her. The hall was ornate, filled with music, laughter, and the vibrant chatter of guests. The scent of fresh flowers and spices hung in the air, making everything feel alive. He moved slowly through the crowd, his eyes searching, until he saw her across the room. She had arrived quietly, standing near the far side, her posture graceful, her demeanor calm. She wore a flowing dress, and her veil was carefully draped, soft folds framing her face. As usual, she moved gently, speaking with others with quiet warmth and genuine interest. He watched, feeling a familiar pull of curiosity and admiration. Something inside him knew that tonight. Something significant might happen, though he could not yet understand what it would be. The event progressed with music, performances, and speeches. Guests mingled, sharing laughter and stories. She was involved in the activities, helping where she could, guiding those who were unsure, and offering encouragement to those who needed it. He noticed how people gravitated toward her, not because of her appearance, but because of the calm confidence and authenticity she carried. There was a magnetic quality to her presence that drew attention without effort. Then, a sudden commotion drew his gaze. A strong gust of wind, unexpected in the enclosed hall, swept across the room. It caused a few decorations to sway and a few items to fall from tables. In the middle of this, her veil shifted unexpectedly. For a moment it slipped slightly, revealing her face fully to him. His heart skipped. He was unprepared for the sight. The features beneath the veil were striking, but not in a superficial way. There was beauty, yes, but also an undeniable grace and confidence that radiated from within. Her eyes were expressive, conveying warmth, intelligence, and kindness. All at once, for a few seconds, he could not speak or move. The world around them seemed to blur, and all he could focus on was her. It was a moment that shattered his assumptions. The plainness he had once imagined replaced with a revelation of depth, elegance, and inner light. He realized with a sudden clarity that he had been blind to what truly mattered. Beauty, he understood now, was not a matter of appearance alone, but a combination of presence, character, and authenticity. She noticed the moment. Her veil now slightly askew, and she smiled softly, acknowledging the mishap without embarrassment. There was no attempt to draw attention to herself, no apology beyond a quiet acknowledgement of the wind. Her ease, the grace with which she handled the situation, made the revelation even more striking. He felt a rush of admiration, mingled with a sense of humility. For the first time, he saw her not as an object of curiosity, but as a full person complex, capable, and profoundly remarkable. The rest of the evening passed in a blur for him. He found himself watching her closely, noticing the small gestures that defined her. When she spoke with others, her voice carried a gentle authority. When she smiled at children, her warmth was palpable. When she helped with small tasks, her efficiency and care were evident. Each detail added to the image of a person who was not just beautiful in appearance, but in essence. At one point, they were briefly alone near a quiet corner of the hall. He hesitated, unsure how to speak, wanting to acknowledge what he had seen without making it awkward. Finally, he found the courage to speak. "I realize now how wrong I was before," he said, his voice soft, honest. "I thought I had seen you, but I hadn't, not really." She looked at him, her expression calm, yet attentive. "We often misjudge what we see," she said gently. "It takes time and patience to truly understand someone." Her words were simple, but they carried weight, a wisdom that seemed effortless. He nodded, feeling the truth of it, realizing that everything he had assumed about appearances had been limited. They spent a few moments in quiet conversation, talking about the evening, about the events they had attended, and about the people around them. It was a natural dialogue, comfortable and engaging, with no pretense or need for showmanship. He noticed again how easy it was to talk with her, how her presence encouraged honesty and reflection rather than performance. The veil incident had revealed more than her face. It had revealed a depth of character that he had not fully appreciated before. As the evening drew to a close, she excused herself politely, but not before offering him a small, knowing smile. It was a smile that acknowledged the moment without making it heavy or complicated. He watched her leave, feeling a combination of awe, respect, and a budding admiration that went beyond appearance. The revelation of her face, her calm response, and the strength of her presence had left an indelible mark. Walking home, he reflected on the events of the evening. Every detail replayed in his mind the way the wind had shifted her veil. The moment of revelation, the quiet grace with which she moved through the room, and the warmth she radiated. He realized that he had learned a profound lesson about perception, judgment, and the true nature of beauty. It was not in what was immediately visible, but in the combination of character, actions, and the way someone made others feel. He thought about the time he had initially dismissed her as plain, and he felt a twinge of regret. Yet he also felt gratitude for the moments that had allowed him to see beyond appearances, for the lessons she had taught without speaking directly, and for the way she had opened his eyes to a deeper understanding of people. The experience was transformative, leaving him eager to continue learning, observing, and appreciating the world around him in a way he never had before. Her veil had fallen, but more importantly, the veil of his assumptions had fallen as well. He understood now that every person carries layers unseen at first glance, and that the moments when these layers are revealed are often unforgettable. It was a lesson he would carry forward, a turning point in his understanding of the world, and a moment that had changed how he viewed not just her, but himself and the people around him. That night, as he lay awake reflecting, he knew this was not the end of the story. There would be more moments, more encounters, and more discoveries. But he also knew that nothing could ever erase the impact of that one unforgettable moment. The instant her veil fell and revealed not just her face, but the depth, grace, and quiet strength that had been hidden, waiting to be seen by someone willing to look beyond the surface. Days after that unforgettable evening, he found himself reflecting on the moments they had shared, both brief and subtle. Her calm demeanor, thoughtful actions, and the quiet strength she exuded had left an impression that lingered. He realized how much he had learned about perception and the danger of quick judgments. The veil incident was more than a literal revelation. It was symbolic. It's a moment that stripped away assumptions and replaced them with understanding. He began noticing the world differently. In crowded streets, at gatherings, or during casual encounters, he paid closer attention to the people around him. He observed small gestures, subtle expressions, and acts of kindness that he might have overlooked before. Every encounter became a lesson in humility, empathy, and the richness of human character. He realized that people often revealed their true selves in ways that were not immediately visible, and that taking the time to observe and understand made life infinitely more meaningful. He thought about the way she had moved through the events they had attended together. Every smile she offered, every hand she helped, every encouraging word she spoke had been effortless, yet profound. He understood that her presence had not just been about outward beauty. It had been about authenticity, grace, and a kind of magnetic energy that inspired those around her. In witnessing her, he had begun to see the value of substance over appearance and of quiet influence over loud showmanship. Curiosity became a gentle drive in his daily life. He wanted to know more about her world, her motivations, and her experiences. He wondered what stories shaped her, what dreams she pursued, and how she maintained such a consistent kindness in a world often focused on vanity and competition. It was not about infatuation in a superficial sense. It was about a genuine desire to understand a person whose depth had captivated him. He felt drawn to learn from her and to see life through the lens of someone so authentic. He began seeking opportunities to encounter her in natural settings. Sometimes it was at the market, sometimes at small community events, and occasionally by chance in parks or cafes. Each time, he found himself engaged not just by conversation, but by observation. He watched how she treated others, how she maintained composure in unexpected situations, and how she seemed to touch lives with subtlety and care. Each interaction revealed layers of her character he had not noticed before. Deepening his respect and admiration, during one afternoon at a small bookshop, they crossed paths again. She was helping a young boy select a book, listening attentively as he explained what kind of stories he liked. Her patience and genuine interest drew him in. And he found himself helping without hesitation, enjoying the natural flow of cooperation between them. They spoke casually afterward, exchanging thoughts on the books, their experiences, and the small joys of everyday life. The conversation was comfortable and engaging, effortless in its flow, and left him feeling enriched rather than entertained. He realized that being with her, observing her, and talking to her encouraged reflection, self-awareness, and emotional growth. Her presence challenged him to think more deeply, to act more thoughtfully, to appreciate qualities that were often overlooked in a world obsessed with appearances. He began to apply these lessons in his own life, noticing small acts of kindness, listening more attentively, and valuing people for their character rather than surface impressions. One evening, as they walked through a quiet park together, the sun dipping low and casting a warm glow over the trees, he felt compelled to speak honestly. "I've learned something important because of you," he said. "I used to judge people too quickly, focusing only on what I could see. You've shown me that there's so much more to notice if we take the time." She smiled softly, her eyes reflecting understanding. "We all have layers," she replied. "Sometimes it takes someone willing to look beyond the surface to appreciate what's really there. I'm glad you're seeing it now." Her words were gentle but meaningful. He felt the weight of truth in them. He realized that this connection was not about appearances, social status, or fleeting attraction. It was about recognition, understanding, and the appreciation of genuine human qualities. He felt grateful for every moment that had led to this realization: the gatherings, community events, the shared tasks, and even the moment her veil had fallen. Each experience had contributed to a deeper awareness of what mattered in people, relationships, and life itself. In the days that followed, continued to meet in simple ways: a walk, a conversation over tea, a shared task, and a community project. Each interaction allowed him to learn more about her, and in turn, about himself. He discovered that he could be more patient, more attentive, and more considerate. She became a mirror reflecting the best qualities he could cultivate. Inspiring him to grow without demanding it, he began to notice how others responded to her as well. Her kindness, calmness, and authenticity seemed to ripple outward, affecting everyone in her vicinity. People were drawn to her, not because of looks or charm, but because of the warmth and sincerity she radiated. Witnessing this made him understand the power of character, and how influence often came quietly, without fanfare, and yet left a lasting impact. With time, he felt a growing sense of connection and trust. They shared more personal stories, dreams, and reflections, building a bond that was not superficial but grounded in mutual respect and understanding. He learned that her life experiences had shaped her compassion, resilience, and calm demeanor, and she, in turn, seemed to appreciate his growing awareness and thoughtfulness. Responding with openness and gentle encouragement, he often thought back to that first evening, when he had seen her and dismissed her as plain. The memory now seemed distant and almost foreign, a reminder of how incomplete perception could be. He realized that the true beauty of a person lay not just in what was seen, but in the qualities that emerged over time: kindness, patience, authenticity, and the quiet influence one had on others. One afternoon, while helping at another small community gathering, he noticed her guiding a shy volunteer with patience and encouragement. He felt a deep admiration, not just for her actions, but for the consistency of her character. She did not seek praise or recognition, yet she affected everyone around her profoundly. In that moment, he understood that knowing someone fully was a journey, a process of observation, reflection, and engagement. And he wanted to continue that journey with her. Evenings became moments of reflection for him. Thinking about the lessons she had unknowingly imparted, he realized that he had grown not just in understanding others, but in understanding himself. He noticed the subtle changes in his behavior, the greater empathy, and the appreciation for authenticity in all people he encountered. He felt grateful for the chance to see life differently, all because of a person he had once misjudged. As their bond strengthened, he understood that the story of their connection was not about sudden revelations or dramatic events. It was about the accumulation of small, meaningful moments. The depth of character revealed over time, and the quiet impact one person could have on another. She had taught him to look deeper, to value substance over surface, and to recognize the richness in simplicity and authenticity. He knew that their relationship, whatever shape it would take in the future, had already changed him profoundly. The lesson of her veil falling, the literal and figurative revelation, would remain with him forever. A reminder to approach life with patience, attention, and an open heart. He felt a deep gratitude for every interaction, every shared smile, and every moment of quiet understanding. And so, their story continued, not in grand gestures or dramatic turns, but in the steady accumulation of moments that mattered. Each encounter, each conversation, each observation of her kindness and grace built a tapestry of connection that was rich, meaningful, and unforgettable. He had learned that true understanding was not immediate, but earned through attention, empathy, and genuine curiosity. He looked forward to the days ahead, eager to continue discovering who she was, and in the process, learning more about himself. He knew that the journey was ongoing and that the lessons she had shown him would ripple through every aspect of his life. She had revealed a world he had not fully seen, and he was determined to embrace it. Aware now that the most extraordinary things often lay hidden behind what first seemed ordinary, months had passed since that unforgettable evening when her veil had fallen, revealing more than just her face. It had revealed a depth of character that stayed with him. The small lessons, quiet moments, and thoughtful gestures he had witnessed over time had become a part of how he saw the world. He noticed himself being more patient, more empathetic, and more attuned to the nuances of people's character. Life felt different now, richer and more meaningful. Shaped by the example of someone who had once seemed ordinary to him, they had spent countless hours together, not in grand adventures, but in everyday moments that revealed more about each other. Simple walks through parks, discussions over tea, volunteering at community events, and shared reflections had become the foundation of their growing connection. With each encounter, he felt his understanding deepened, not only of her, but of himself. He realized that her influence was subtle yet profound, shaping his perspective, priorities, and values. One afternoon, they were at a small local library, organizing books for a reading program for children. She moved gracefully between shelves, her attention focused on the smallest details, ensuring each book was in order, making sure the environment was welcoming and organized. He found himself following her lead, noticing the care she put into every action. It was not about recognition or showing off. It was about creating something meaningful for others. Watching her in this way made him reflect on the qualities he admired, not just her outward beauty, but her patience, thoughtfulness, and dedication. A young girl approached them, holding a torn book in her hands, looking worried. She explained that the book belonged to the reading program, and she was afraid it could not be used again. She looked up at them nervously, unsure of what to do. She knelt down, smiling gently at the girl, and assured her that everything could be fixed. With careful hands, she repaired the torn pages while explaining to the girl how books, like people, could be mended and still be valuable. The girl's eyes lit up, her fear replaced by hope and gratitude. He watched silently, realizing that her small act of kindness had created a lasting impact, one that would be remembered far beyond that day. As they finished organizing the books, they sat quietly on a bench in the library's reading corner. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating her calm expression. He felt a sense of contentment, a rare and profound feeling of ease in her presence. There was no need for words to fill the space. Silence was comfortable, shared, and meaningful. "I've learned so much from you," he said softly, breaking the quiet. "Not just about people, but about myself. I didn't realize how much I relied on surface impressions, how quickly I judged, how often I missed what mattered." She looked at him, her eyes warm and reflective. "We all have things to learn," she replied, "but it's never too late to change the way we see the world. Understanding takes time, patience, and willingness to notice things others overlook." He nodded, feeling the truth of her words settle within him. He thought back to the first evening they had met, the moment he had dismissed her as plain, and the moment the veil had fallen. Each memory now felt like a lesson, a step in a journey that had reshaped his perspective. He understood that her influence had been constant, quiet and steady, ever forceful, never demanding, yet undeniably transformative. As the weeks turned into months, he noticed how much he had changed. He approached interactions with others differently, paying closer attention to the little things, valuing substance over appearance, and seeking to understand rather than judge. Her example had become a model, a standard for how he wished to navigate life. The lessons she had imparted, both intentionally and through her actions, had woven into the fabric of his character. They continued to share small moments that mattered. A walk by the river, watching children play and pointing out the beauty of small details in nature, helping an elderly neighbor carry groceries and learning the importance of patience and empathy, reading stories to children and understanding the joy of nurturing curiosity. Each experience reinforced what he had learned, that true impact came from subtle acts, consistency, and genuine care for others. One evening, as they walked along a quiet street lined with trees, the soft glow of streetlights illuminating their path, he reflected aloud. "I can see now how easy it is to miss what matters. We rush, we judge, we assume. But being with you has shown me that the world is richer when we take the time to notice, to understand, and to act thoughtfully." She smiled, her expression serene. "Life is full of hidden beauty," she said. "Sometimes we just need someone to guide our attention, to show us that the ordinary can be extraordinary if we see it the right way." He realized that her influence was not only in guiding him to see others more clearly, but in helping him understand himself. He had become more aware, more reflective, and more mindful. He had learned the value of patience, humility, and kindness. He had learned to appreciate the depth of character, the strength and calmness, and the power of subtle, thoughtful actions. As they approached the end of the street, a small crowd had gathered for a neighborhood celebration. Children were playing, music floated through the air, and people exchanged warm greetings. She moved among them effortlessly, helping a parent calm a crying child, offering a gentle word to a hesitant volunteer, and acknowledging everyone with warmth. He observed her quietly, noticing how natural her influence was. People gravitated toward her, not because of appearance or charisma, but because of her authenticity and care. He realized that the veil had fallen long ago, not just in the literal sense, but metaphorically. He had begun to see her fully, to understand the depth of her character, and to value the qualities that made her truly remarkable. And in seeing her, he had learned to see himself, others, and the world differently. It was a transformation that was subtle, yet profound, affecting every interaction, every judgment, and every moment of reflection as the celebration continued. They joined a group of neighbors sharing food and laughter. He found himself sharing stories, listening actively, and participating with genuine interest. He noticed how his perspective had shifted, not seeking recognition, not seeking to impress, but engaging with a sincere desire to understand and connect. It was a lesson she had imparted without words, simply by being herself. Later that evening, as they walked home under a sky filled with stars, he felt a sense of completion, of understanding, yet also anticipation. There was still much to discover, much to learn, and many moments ahead that would shape their journey together. But he knew that the foundation had been laid: respect, admiration, understanding, and genuine connection. The journey had begun with a simple misjudgment, a veil that fell, and moments that revealed character over appearance. He looked at her, her face calm and serene in the soft night light, and felt a deep gratitude. She had changed the way he saw the world, the way he engaged with people, and the way he understood himself. Her quiet strength, patience, and authenticity had left an indelible mark, shaping not just their relationship, but the way he approached life. He understood that the story they shared was not about grand gestures or dramatic events, but about the accumulation of small, meaningful moments that revealed truth, depth, and humanity. And so the journey continued. Every day became an opportunity to notice, to understand, and to appreciate the world more fully. The lessons she had imparted, both consciously and through her presence, remained with him, guiding him in interactions, decisions, and reflections. He had learned to see beyond the surface, to value the essence of people, and to recognize that the most extraordinary qualities often lay hidden, waiting to be discovered by those willing to look carefully and with an open heart. In the end, he realized that the most unforgettable moment had been more than the veil falling. It had been the slow, steady revelation of a remarkable person, someone who changed his perspective, inspired growth, and taught him the value of patience, empathy, and quiet influence. He had been given a gift, the ability to see deeply, to appreciate fully, and to connect genuinely. And with that gift came a new way of living, one that would continue to shape him, guide him, and inspire him in all the days to come.